So this is the front page of Friday's Daily Mail London. And it's the kind of complete lies that the Daily Mail has been persisting and perpetuating for decades. Its headline, Rest in Peace, Corbyn's Legacy of Hate. For a start, Corbyn is being overrated here. And on page 39 of the Mail today, the same issue, they have Donald Trump's King of Europe. That is the legacy of lying by the Daily Mail that must be exposed. Now, how are these evil forces working together? That is the quest. And that is the motivating factor behind the task that we carry out, investigating, diagnosing the crooks and corruption. Now, in Tower Hamlets, this is the phase that we are continuing on the role of the Tower Hamlets Council in corrupting the community and corrupting its own kind of behavior. Now, we have here we shall run through these front pages and then resume the exclusive commentary on Tower Hamlets, and then we'll come back to the other ones. This is the Boris graph, the front page, and the front page has got now there is one page that I have to kind of briefly mention, because we have exclusively denounced this on the day that the Sunday Times published a whole kind of number of pages. This page is about the Sunday Times said about the Gulf state sheikh, the Minister for Tolerance. And that's the piece that the Boris graph, and this has nothing to do with Boris graph, it's to do with the UK trade relations with the Gulf, or trade kind of thing. Now, this is something that a sheikh, an Emirati cabinet minister, will not be prosecuted for the alleged sexual assault and torture of a Hay Festival curator, the Crown Prosecution Service announced yesterday. Caitlin McNamara, 32, had claimed Sheikh Nahyan bin Mubarak Al Nahyan, 69, had kissed and groped her when she went to visit him at his private island villa in February to discuss Hay's first literary festival in Abu Dhabi. Her lawyers had hoped that the CPS would be able to prosecute the Gulf Royal under the concept of universal jurisdiction, in which serious offences can be tried despite them not having taken place in the UK. But in a statement, the CPS said the legal criteria had not been met for charges to be brought against the Sheikh, the United Arab Emirates Tolerance Minister. The Sheikh has denied the allegations. Jenny Hopkins, the head of the CPS Special Crime and Counter-Terrorism Division, said sexual offences can have devastating and lasting impact on victims, and the CPS will always prosecute cases where our legal test is met. The CPS has carefully reviewed evidence passed to us by the Metropolitan Police after a British woman reported being sexually assaulted earlier this year while working abroad. Possible charges of sexual assault and torture were considered. However, after thorough consideration, we have concluded that the evidence does not support a prosecution and will not be taking the case any further. We have explained our reasoning in detail and offered to meet the complainant to clarify any points. I understand this is not the outcome of the complainant wanted, but the Crown Prosecution Service must ensure that the law is properly applied and make fair, objective, and independent decisions in every case. Now, Ms. McNamara waived her legal right to anonymity as an alleged victim of a sexual assault because she felt she had nothing to lose. She said she wanted to highlight the effect of powerful men like him doing things like that and thinking they can get away with it. Now, this is the update sort of note. Update because we said that this was completely way out of order for the Sunday Times to devote so much space to, while denying space to others, thousands of others cases of sexual assault and other violent acts and abuses that were taking place in Abu Dhabi and the rest of the Gulf states. And we are now mentioning this one. We shall come back to referring to the CPS statement about this lack of evidence and the complainant's claims not meeting the test of the CPS. Now, we are not fans of the CPS, but the point is that if powerful men can get away with this, there has been a kind of duplicity in the treatment of three of the housing fraud kind of perpetrators that have been named so far in the last several years in Tower Hamlets. Even if the housing fraud in each case were kind of true and established as having taken place, even if, and we say that as a kind of notional kind of point, then all the evidence of the damages caused by these fraudsters and the perpetrated fraud would still not be anywhere as damaging, as detrimental to the community in Tower Hamlets and to society generally as the crimes committed by the liars in post in the housing benefit section, where the manager has been the racist liar criminal Steve Hill and his co-liar Colin Cormack and their co-liars in the Spitalfield Housing Small Business Association caused over the years of the particular damage that they did and the years that are covered by the corresponding incumbency in the post of mayor, elected mayor by Lutfur Rahman. Now, if any of those fraudsters deserve to be prosecuted, then Lutfur Rahman deserves to be prosecuted for the damage he has done. So the question will remain on the table as to why Lutfur Rahman was not prosecuted for his collusion with the criminals in Tower Hamlets Council that caused the damage to the Kitten's house at 164 Brick Lane, London E16RU. And the attendant damages done before that at the property in London E27AA. And Lutfur Rahman's role in covering up and hiding the crimes and the wrongdoings done by Tower Hamlets Council personnel in relation to the property in E15RD and in relation to the property at E11HE and in relation to the properties at E15NF and at other addresses. So what we shall be doing in this particular part of this diagnosis of Fleet Street is take a look at the rest of the headlines about Jeremy Corbyn and take the commentary back to Tower Hamlets because they're all connected, because the allegation against Afsana Begum, as published on the Sun yesterday, Thursday, also referred to the allegations against her concerning her alleged endorsement of anti-Jewish kind of post or publication or opinions. And we shall be looking at the entire kind of institutional arrangement that on paper exists but in reality doesn't work. And that failure is causing harm and detriment and damages to people who are legitimately entitled to the services of the council, which these perpetrators, fraudsters, have abused and taken for granted. And they have done so with the knowledge of Lutfur Rahman, because the three kind of persons that are now in the latest list, there have been four in the last 8 years. So if we leave out the name of Shelina Akhtar, who was for a short time a councillor, because we leave out Shelina Akhtar because evidence made available to our campaign several years ago, convincing evidence, persuasive evidence, evidence that we are kind of able to say independently, kind of demonstrated as true and accurate, shows that in the actual trapping of Shelina Akhtar as a fraudster, people from Lutfur Rahman's regime were involved. So people from Lutfur Rahman's regime were involved as conspirators against Shelina Akhtar. So Shelina Akhtar, according to those sources, was fitted up by the, let's say, participants, members of or supporters of Lutfur Rahman's regime as elected mayor. For those reasons, we shall not include Shelina Akhtar in the list of this kind of list of discuss. We shall be discussing in relation to housing fraud. Triggered, this discussion having been triggered by the latest updates coming from the prosecution service or prosecution of Afsana Begum. Before Afsana Begum, there was a councillor called Muhammad Harun, who was prosecuted and jailed. And before that was a councillor called Shahid Ali, who was prosecuted and jailed. So these three we shall discuss in the context of Tower Hamlets Council and how the council is corrupt. Remember what we are saying. We are not ignoring the fact that those three have been prosecuted and two have already been found guilty and has been jailed. We are saying in addition and very clearly the Tower Hamlets Council itself is a corrupt council, is a criminally run and criminally controlled and criminally applied operation and a clique and an organization of criminals. Take a pause there and think about what we're saying. In the news about Afsana Begum, the prosecutors are the council, Tower Hamlets Council. And by all indications, the prosecutors would involve the racist, liar, criminal, Steve Hill. We shall be reading some of this stuff about Steve Hill in this course, in this program. So if Hill or any of his legal so-called advisors watching this or studying this, they should be very careful. And I say this in fairness. I have been an active student, that is to say, I study law for longer than Steve Hill has been alive, I think. Even if he has not been alive, I think I've been studying the law for longer than Steve Hill has been an adult, let's say. And so when I sent Steve Hill those warnings, I did not for a moment send him the warnings in any expectation that any of the available existing institutions, so-called law enforcing authorities or institutions, including the courts of law in England, would be upholding the law. Remember what I'm saying. I sent them to Steve Hill as universally valid legal warnings and notices, not depending on any outcome in my favor or any just outcome delivered by any county court, high court, division court, court of appeal, the Supreme Court here in England. Because long before I had the misfortune of encountering the criminal, racist, liar, Steve Hill, I had studied enough about the law in this country. I have studied law in every single way. And I have concluded on the evidence that there was no legal system that could be relied on by objective kind of criteria. The legal system in this country, as staffed by licensed law traders, either as judges or members of the licensed law trades, either as solicitors or barristers, are crooks and liars. And without exception, all the key decision-making ones are racists. And in the context of the last 30 years, are anti-Muslim criminals. And so therefore, all the factors that I have now summarized there were relevant in my conclusion that anything I said to Steve Hill had to be upheld by me doing the necessary. And this is one of the necessary acts and actions that I anticipated having to do. And not because the legal system existed to deliver justice or due outcome. For example, here, and I would say this diagnosis is a legal diagnosis. So anyone who is not able to put up with the kind of tedium of having to go through the details is welcome to switch off. But otherwise, it would be absolutely fascinating and worth a lifetime study and work. Here is I'm hoping to get the access to the particular series of emails that I would read from about Steve Hill, the liar. So I'll read a sample of the emails. So let's say I'm reading one email from 11:34 to 11:27. That's a local UK time on Monday, the 13th of October 2014. And this reads, further evidence of the extent to which hectic work was undertaken to get as much support as possible to prevent the illegal eviction September 2011 that Steve Hill and Tower Hamlets community housing had caused. You, that is an employee of Tower Hamlets Council called D. Barnett, will see that Carlo Gibbs, who was the ward councillor concerned, that was contacted in detail at the time, did not answer the evidential questions. He neither named who the Tower Hamlets community housing he had spoken to or what exactly the conversation or communication was, thus leaving unanswered the extent of his role if he did make the contacts he claimed to have made. As the ward councillor, Carlo Gibbs also lied, and this is well known as part of the claims made to John S. Williams before Gibbs lost his seat and ceased being a councillor. And the list of lying done by councillors and Tower Hamlets council employees goes on. That is 11:32 hours on Monday, 13th of October 2014. That was the end of that one. Now, before that, the day before, or the previous kind of item that was addressed to Carlo Gibbs in an email timed as 13:15 hours Monday, 12 September 2011. So there may be an error in terms of the date. Monday 12 September or Monday 13 September. Apart from that, let's read the substance of what was sent to Carlo Gibbs. Now, Gibbs, remember, is connected with the lying of Steve Hill and the lying of Mike Tyrrell at the Tower Hamlets community housing. To Carlo Gibbs, it says, please confirm by email to this address the full or as complete as reasonably and objectively possible itemized list or an accurate summary of evidence as far as you honestly perceived it that you had been given by Mr. Muhammad Haq, that is myself. This Carlo Gibbs, the criminal racist liar, claimed that I had been sending him anonymous communications, pretending to be sending them from an address that was supposed to be a legal advocacy or legal rights or legal representative organization. Now, for that criminal, Carlo Gibbs, the racist liar, let me say this. It is absolutely constitutional, legal, and ethical to set up an advocacy campaign organization, either as a legal rights platform or as a rights platform. And I never needed to not tell him what it was that I was representing, because I spoke to him myself, the liar, the racist. So I asked him, please also confirm who in Tower Hamlets community housing you had contact with, that you referred to in your only email so far as sent for the attention of Mr. Huck, since he had gotten in touch with you for the first time on the phone on Saturday, the Saturday before the Monday. So there is more to this, and it is all relating to Steve Hill's lying as well. Now, the Carlo Gibbs is a racist liar who was on the board of the criminal and criminally controlled, racistly operated Tower Hamlets community housing. And this Carlo, the racist liar Gibbs, pretends to be somebody who knows the law. On his evidence, on the evidence of his criminal behavior, he may know the law, but he does not observe the requirements of law. Here is the piece that was sent to the criminal on Monday. Well, in September, now he says that he received the information from me. That was Sunday, the 11th of September. So Monday should have been the 12th of September, not the 13th. So he said, I can confirm that I have received these emails regarding the eviction order pursued by Tower Hamlets Community Housing. Now, what he said in the rest of it is complete rubbish, because he said that he was only told about this at a late stage and he could not guarantee any outcome that would stop the eviction. That is not what he was told. He was told that Tower Hamlets Community Housing had lied. He was told that Tower Hamlets Community's Mike Tyrrell had conspired with Steve Hill to create a fictitious rent arrears as a pretext for an eviction. He was told other things along the same lines, and he was told details, and he was asked to request any further clarification if he didn't understand any of the concepts or any of the facts. But the racist liar Carlo Gibbs never asked any of the questions. Now that is one aspect of the lying by the council, because Carlo Gibbs had been a councillor, and in that position he had been on the board of the Tower Hamlets Community Housing, where the criminal Mike Tyrrell was operating his crimes. So let's look at the other ones. That is a kind of reference to Carlo Gibbs as being part of the gang of racist liars colluding and refusing to answer questions. Now, this is the email that is sent on the date. Remember what we are discussing. We are discussing the Tower Hamlets Council needs being prosecuted because it is committing criminal lies by conspiring and fabricating pretexts in order to take people into court on arrears that are not there, or on grounds that are not there on the facts, but have been created by the criminals. Now, this is the one. This is dated the 10th of January 2012. and it is about the evidence, and you can see the actual contents of this email. That is somebody called Miss Koshal. What is her full name? Koshal. Let's see what her name is. Miss Helen Koshal. And this was sent on my behalf because the organization that this is part of had other supporters and people working for me or with me. So this was sent for the attention of Miss Helen Koshal, as sent on behalf of Mr. Huck re Steve Hill's lies. That is the date on that is 20. The original one was sent. Let's see what date it was sent. So it was sent on the 10th of January 2012. Okay, so let's read this one to Helen Koshal. And remember, this is about Steve Hill in Tower Hamlets Councils and Mike Tyrrell at the Tower Hamlets Community Housing. And one of the former now no longer a counselors called Carlo Gibbs, the racist liar. So these three racist liars were involved in a series of fabrications, and they have not been prosecuted. They need to be prosecuted. They need to be acted on. Remember, we are talking about the prosecution of Afsana Begum for housing fraud. That is one housing fraud or one person doing housing fraud. But these employees and these counselors and these kind of chief executive of the Tower Hamlets Community Housing were doing series of lies and frauds. So that is the context. That is why Tower Hamlets is a cesspit of corruption in every particular detail. So here is my email to Helen Koshal, dated the 10th of, let's see what date it is. Yes, 10th of January 2012. Dear Miss Koshal, in reply to your email received as in sin for the first time by Mr. Huck today, this is sent from the organization, so it is referring to myself and the third party. It is the position of Mr. Huck that, contrary to the contents of the email that you have sent to him from your email address, there are many complaints, Freedom of Information Act requests, and subject access requests currently very actively outstanding with the various holders of posts in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council that Mr. Huck had outlined to you in his conversation on Friday of last week. So remember, this is the kind of detail that I went to. And this is the kind of clear evidence of the details of lying by the personnel in post. This one is Helen Koshal. She was lying as well. The contents of your email suggest, I was continuing in this email of the 10th of January 2012. The contents of your email suggest that you may have been guided by Isabella Freeman or by someone taking orders from that monitor of fantasies. Now, Isabella Freeman was the monitoring officer, that is the chief legal officer of the council at the time. And she is obviously a proven discredited criminal and a liar who lied for Lutfur Rahman, who lied with Lutfur Rahman, and who lied for others, including Steve Hill. Now, continuing the email of the 10th of January 2012, Mr. Huck can assure you that if that is indeed the case, then you, Helen Koshal that is, have been fed lies by either Isabella Freeman or by someone that believes that they can justify their lying by wearing a cloak of being in the legal section of the council. You should withdraw the contents of your email to Mr. Huck. And if you are still under the wrongful guidance, then you must be prepared to be cited as a witness in the court actions that Isabella Freeman knows Mr. Hawke has notified her of. For the nth time in context and on the records, Mr. Hawke's outstanding claims, requests, and legal, contractual, constitutional demands include claims against the following, who are all at the relevant times and in relation to the relevant grounds employees or contractors or agents of the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council. And this is a list of 5 of the criminals. Isabella Freeman herself, Colin Cormack, David Galpin, Tim Rogers, and Ruth Dowden. Now, Tim Rogers is a notorious racist criminal who left Tower Hamlets Council and took a job somewhere else in another borough and came across as an anti-Muslim, racist liar, posting absolutely hateful stuff on the Ted Jury blog against Tower Hamlets Muslims and Tower Hamlets community and Bangladeshis. And Ruth Dowden is a sub-educated, stupid idiot that was appointed by Sylvie Pierce as the complaints officer. And Ruth Dowden is a complete, absolute idiot because I personally took her to the addresses that were affected by the lies and lying of Tower Hamlets Council employees in relation to housing. And Ruth Dowden completely behaved as a typical racist denier. So we shall discuss Ruth Dowden personally and Tim Rogers, Rodgers, Rogers in detail in due course. Going back to the email that I sent to Helen Koshel on the 10th of January 2012, the above named behaved wrongly or wrongfully despite repeatedly made legal warnings to each one of them that they ought not to go ahead with what was at each point ahead of perpetration, known to be their intention to do so, do a wrong. I'll read the paragraph again. The above named behaved wrongly or wrongfully despite repeatedly made legal warnings to each one of them that they ought not to go ahead with what was at each point ahead of perpetration, known to be their intention to do a wrong, and as it turned out, to do the specific wrong thing by carelessly and or prejudicially and or recklessly violating the rights of the claimant, that is Mr. Hawke, that is myself. This item is now being added to the updater items of evidence that Mr. Hawke is asking to be seen by the court in connection with one of the several ongoing legal processes. Now remember, this is all in accordance with due process. It is not in accordance with any expectation that any court of law would rule against any of the racists, any of the liars, any of the criminals in action in Tower Hamlets Council, or as part of the complicity operation with complicity and collusion with the Tower Hamlets Council, such as the outside organization called the Tower Hamlets Community Housing, fronted at that time by the racist criminal liar Mike Tyrrell. That appeal relates directly to the misconduct by Isabella Freeman in abusing her post and encouraging de facto one or more than one member of the Tower Hamlets Council staff to continue to collude with Tower Hamlets Community Housing to create a scenario whereby Tower Hamlets Council, Tower Hamlets Community Housing could then seek to evict Mr. Hawke. Now that reference to eviction relates to Mike Tyrrell, the racist liar controlling the Tower Hamlets Community Housing, deciding in July 1996 that a campaign against racist attack that I had been organizing in that month after a racist nearly killed a Bangladeshi called Dilwar off the old Bethnal Green Road. When I organized that campaign, I did so at the request of people who knew the family. I didn't know the family, but I was approached by somebody who knew the family well, and they requested help from me. And after finding out the actual incident details, what happened, I decided to organize a campaign against racist attacks because there was real possibility that other people would be attacked by the racists, either the same ones or ones that are related to the other ones. So in order to protect the innocent people from racist attacks, I organized a Stop the Racist Attacks campaign. That was in July 1996. It wasn't anything that I had the time for, nor the priority, but I had to give up all the other things and make this the priority in order to protect potential victims of the very likely racist attacks in that area in July 1996. At that time, July 1996, that was 10 years before 2006, which we shall come to, but 2006 is the year when the Tower Hamlets Council housing stock transfer to Tower Hamlets community housing actually was effectively completed. So that is the reference. In 1996, in July 1996, Mike Tyrrell was still an employee of Tower Hamlets Council. And Mike Tyrrell was somebody I didn't know. All I knew was that the racists who attacked Dilwar and were plotting further attacks on him and his family and others did the attacking from premises that belonged to the Tower Hamlets Council. That's all I knew. So the demand, or one of the demands that I had to raise publicly and directed the Tower Hamlets Council was that they should make everything possible happen to stop any racist attacks, including in the old Bethnal Green Road area. Unknown to me, Mike Tyrrell was in post as a manager of the what was then called Bethnal Green South or Bethnal Green North, whatever it was, Bethnal Green housing operation of the Tower Hamlets Council. Now that is no longer active as a Bethnal Green or area based, but at that time in July 1996, it was Bethnal Green housing. And Mike Tyrrell decided that the campaign against racism and racist attacks was against him. I had not focused on him as opposed to focusing on the council's role as a whole. Now, the particular family that had been attacked at that time has been rehoused, and that rehousing also involved me, because when the council offered to rehouse them, they offered them a place near the Badet Road, which was a location that the family would not be safe in, because the location was very much unsuitable and was not a safe place. So I continued to argue with the council, demanding that the family be given decent, proper housing. Eventually, the family got housing at an address which is not far from Brick Lane. And that address I shall not be disclosing for obvious legal and safety reasons. But suffice to say that my campaign was successful in preventing the family being consigned at a very rotten kind of a state. In return for my work, I was targeted by Mike Tyrrell for eviction from my own very unsuitable but my own flat in the E1 area. And that is when he wrote a memo to two other Tower Hamlets Council employees asking them to evict me. That's when the eviction started. The eviction process went on for 15 years until September 2011, when Mike Tyrrell got me evicted. So he carried on for 15 years. Now, any account of what happened in those 15 years would show that Mike Tyrrell was engaged as an employee of the council to find an excuse to evict me for my taking a moral, high, and ethical stand in defense of somebody or a number of people in the family that were likely to be attacked by racists. Who would say that Mike Tyrrell had any right to do that? Now, that is one of the things that went on for 15 years until he got the eviction in September 2011. Now, 15 years he had been harassing and causing any kind of pretext to find an excuse to evict me. He couldn't find any. He left the Tower Hamlets employment and took part in the gang kind of capture of the council housing stock, which is what Tower Hamlets community housing is. It's a gangster outfit. And Mike Tyrrell is a gangster who, like the popular Harka, seized control of thousands of Tower Hamlets council housing properties. So that was a bigger kind of acquisition than any job that Mike Tyrrell might have as an employee of the council directly. So it's many billions pounds of worth of housing stock that he got hold of. And one of the properties, one of the flats was my flat. So he set about from the very start looking for excuses as to how to find a rent arrears or something like that so that he could apply to the court to get me evicted as a revenge, as a direct revenge for my organizing a campaign against racist attacks on a family in Bethnal Green. Anyone who reads this story in the Sun yesterday should read that in the context that while Afsana Begum is being prosecuted, which she deserves if she has done anything wrong, while Harun has been prosecuted and jailed, while Shahid Ali has been prosecuted and jailed, these are only very small numbers of people who are being prosecuted and convicted and whatever. The vast majority of criminals doing housing fraud and crimes are in posts inside the council and inside the likes of the Tower Hamlets community housing. They are not even notionally, it is not even conceivable that they would be considered as being capable of doing anything wrong. Whereas they are the bigger in terms of the impact, in terms of the damage, in terms of the detriment caused to their victims of their crimes. They are bigger criminals, bigger offenders. But I am not making in this commentary or diagnosis or ever any excuse for anyone who has done any wrong. And that includes this particular prosecution of Afsana Begum or the other ones. What I'm saying is, while they are being prosecuted, the main ones are not being prosecuted. That should be the focus of the attention and energy of whoever is making the decision regarding who gets prosecuted and who doesn't. Now, Mike Tyrrell spent 15 years. Mike Tyrrell spent 15 years on a campaign to frame me so that he could evict me. Now, everyone who knows that I've been a campaigner, I'm a campaigner of the highest standard of morality and ethics. I don't get money from anyone in order to kind of use that as a way of earning money. I don't. I oppose bribery and I uphold ordinary ethics and morality. If I have got any contribution from anyone that I know, that is a contribution from somebody I know, or X or Y, any number of persons. That is contribution that I accept the existence of and the role of. But that is not my doing any campaign in return for any money or any benefit or any career or any post. So I am actually a campaigner who upholds the highest standards of ethics and morality. And I am all for compliance with the requirements of the law. Yet I was being targeted over 15 years so that they could find something I had done that was illegal, so they could actually evict me. I don't smoke, I don't drink, and I most certainly am not a taker or user of any contraband or anything. So what could they find? They couldn't find anything else because I have not done anything else that is wrong in terms of the law or morality. So for 15 years, the chief executive of the Tar Hamlets Community Housing carried on conspiring after conspiring to find a way to apply to the court to have me evicted. Remember, his memo to the other council employees was dated the 23rd of December 1996. He sent a memo to Colin Cormack and Keith Brown, amongst others, in Tar Hamlets Council, and dated 23rd of December 1996, in which memo he repeated what he must have told them otherwise, on the phone, face-to-face, whatever. And he told them that he had told them about me. There was nothing that he could say about me that was kind of illegal. I mean, about me doing anything illegal or unlawful or antisocial. I campaign for decency and respect in society and community, and I am an educator. I'm a campaigner, educator, organizer, social justice, and all the other things. How could he frame me with something that is against my record, my propensities, and my kind of inclinations and my orientations, the purpose of life? My purpose of life is to have a decent, dignified society and environment, and a just society and environment. How was he going to frame me doing something illegal or unlawful? And I'm a highly motivated and educated person. How was he going to catch me out? So therefore, what he did was repeatedly keep trying and make up lies, and there was nothing. Because the eviction order was made on a fictitious basis, and the fiction was exposed because the damage that they did was to the work, the records, the documents, the archives. That is what they destroyed because they dislocated them. But I never did anything wrong. There was nothing that I had done wrong that they could evict me for. I had done nothing, absolutely nothing. There is nothing in the records. And I'm talking now on the 30th of October 2020. I remember when it started. It started in 1996. So it's a quarter of a century that I have been kind of having to deal with the actual impact and the actual contact and the actual act of lying by a series of Tar Hamlets Council employees entire Hrs Council's colluder organizations. So when Lutfur Rahman became the mayor in this month, October 2010, 10 years ago, I told Lutfur Rahman on the 29th of October 2010, as he was leaving the Brick Lane Mosque, and I was in the Brick Lane, actual Brick Lane, and on the evidence, prophetically and clearly, consciously, I was filming him. And I told him to stop the criminals in the council. Otherwise, there would be severe, irreparable damages to the community caused by the criminals. Lutfur Rahman uttered a set of lying words. Now, today is what? Just over 10 years now since the Friday, the 29th of October. Today is 30th of October, by just 1 day difference. But it's 1 day, 10 years and 1 day since I spoke to Lutfur Rahman. And the depth of the damage done by the racists in the council, including by Steve Hill, the depth and the width and the impact of the damages done by the criminally motivated attacks on me for opposing racism, they exceed what is humanly possible for Lutfur Rahman to understand. Because Lutfur Rahman's capacity to understand is limited. As I have said about Jeremy Corbyn, Lutfur Rahman is as intellectually demanding or challenged as Lutfur Rahman is, or even worse. But I had to do the duty, and I had to tell him what was physically possible. And I told him that he could stop the criminals engaged in the plots at that time by listening to me. Because I could have given him the names, I could have given him the decisions, and I could have stopped them doing the crimes. And the first crime that I would have stopped, I would have needed to stop being taken any further, was Steve Hill's lying habit of stopping the housing benefit every 3 months or so. Now, there is no law in common law or in statute law or in kind of case law that gave him the power to do that, but he was abusing his power. And it was something that could not be put to a court of law because it would take longer than the time allowed to stop it would have needed it to be. So I told Lutfur Rahman, as the so-called executive mayor, to stop Steve Hill, to stop Colin Cormack, and to stop Mike Tyrrell. And Lutfur Rahman kept promising to listen to me, but he didn't listen to me. So the only conclusion as to why he lied to me so many times is that somebody or more than one person told him to lie to me and to make all the attacks and all the conspiracies, all the plots go ahead against my rights. What they didn't understand, what they didn't appear to understand, is that these are not just my rights. These are my work, my creation, my work affecting the rights of millions of people. Because I had been engaged, as I am now, in sharing my knowledge, my abilities, my skills, and my insight into the world and society, so that what I have found to be of benefit to wider numbers of people on all kinds of matters and issues can be shared so that hundreds, thousands, millions of people can benefit from this. Concerning migration, concerning education, concerning society, concerning families, concerning religion, concerning all the issues that affect human beings at every level and make people either dependent on other people or independent of other people. And this transcends decades, centuries. All the work that I do is written down or recorded. And it is the written down and recorded contents of my work over decades that Mike Tyrrell put at risk by his racist plot to have me evicted as a revenge for my standing up against racist attacks on one single family. Think about that. So these are the crimes that are going on, both from Tower Hamlets Council and from the Tower Hamlets community housing. And housing has been used as a very severe weapon to apply against a social scientist, social campaigner, ethical campaigner, whatever way you want to describe what I do. So what court is there? Does there exist a court of law in England where all these criminals can be actually held to account? What is even more difficult, is there a court of law where these criminals' crimes and the theft and the robbery of the work that is unique and I alone have created can be restored? Restored by the intervention of? The answer is that no, there is no court of law that is ethically, morally, intellectually. It is like, equipped. It is like expecting a court of law to become part of the sphere, the domain of moral beings, of spiritual beings. There is no such domain. Not on this planet and not in England. So the campaign has to be continued. And the basics of the evidence of the behavior of these criminals brought on the record and put on the record so that people can see in context every single little thing which I keep referring to. This prosecution, this item in the Sun, page 15 of the Sun, yesterday, Thursday, the 29th of October 2020. This is about Afsana Begum, one of the two MPs that is being prosecuted. As I say, that is according to the evidence that should go ahead. But what about the hundreds of crimes being committed by the very people who are the prosecutors of Afsana Begum and all the others? They are committing crimes every single day. And as Tower Hamlets Council is unaccountable, there is no way of knowing where these various crimes that are being cooked up are being kind of discussed, diagnosed, and stopped. Because if there is a housing waiting list of 18,000, which is the number that they gave about the time when Afsana Begum allegedly jumped the queue, what about those people? What 18,000? What is happening to the 18,000? And who are the 18,000? Are they groups of families? Are they individuals? Are they of X or Y ethnic or social background? What are they? And how is it that there are as many as 18,000 or any number of thousands on the housing waiting list? What are the various factors that are involved that underlie the persistence, the perpetuation of so many people on the housing waiting list? Nobody can answer that. Not that nobody should, but nobody exists in Tower Hamlets Council within the elected framework who can answer these questions. So we go back to Fleet Street and see what the Sun is saying. And the Sun is saying in there that they published a connection between Afsana Begum and Jeremy Corbyn about the alleged anti-Jewish posts she either shared or circulated. Now that is where the Sun's interest is. It's Afsana Begum, an ally of Jeremy Corbyn, that they think is relevant. Now, if that is the case, then no wonder that criminals in the councils never get even mentioned as doing crimes. Crimes like denying people the service that the council owes them, let alone mega crimes like Mike Tyrrell spent 15 years plotting to destroy my work and to have me evicted. So we shall be continuing in part C